Hey guys, I'm Mike. I'm an HR professor at the Ted Rogers School of Management. In weekly videos, I'm going to be showing old HR exam questions and solutions to help you out on any specific concept in relation to HR. In this week's video, I will be talking about old exam questions specifically related to job design. Now, job design is a concept which students often forget about. Most of the time, job design is squished in the HR textbook. It's squished alongside job analysis. However, job design is also very important. So if a professor wants to be a little tricky, then they'll add a question specifically related to job design. So you need to know everything about it in order to ace that question. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about two specific old exam questions I've made related to job design. I'll walk you through the questions, I'll talk about the solutions, and then we're going to see how well ChatGPT does at answering my questions. Let's go. All right, so here is an old exam question related to job design. Let's take a look. You are a senior manager at Bloomberg, a financial technology company in New York City. All of your staff are highly educated and highly driven, so a very motivated force. You're considering different ways to increase employee engagement of your staff. Interesting. They're highly motivated, but you still want to ramp up employee engagement. You know that simplified jobs often lead to lower satisfaction, higher rates of absenteeism, and turnover for educated workers. So the first thing, even before I get into these questions, I would probably highlight key terms in my mind or circle them on the paper, something the question might be related to. For me, this is pointing to the chapter in the textbook related to employee engagement. That they throw employee engagement in a variety of chapters, from first chapter to chapters related to job design, organizational culture. Here, this simplified jobs is a form of job design, one particular type. So that's interesting. That points to another direction in terms of job design. And here are outcomes, the negative outcomes that are probably trying to be resolved. Okay, so what is actually the question about? So define employee engagement. This is a no-brainer one. It kind of speaks to just like a simple definition. Okay, no problem. Describe job design. Again, another way to phrase a definition, 2 marks each. So there are many definitions for this. If you can memorize the definition from the textbook, home run, get it perfectly. For me, exact word-to-word answer, it doesn't really matter as long as you're close. That's what's important. Using job design techniques. Okay, perfect. Discuss 2 ways you can modify job content to improve employee engagement. Okay, so for this question in particular, this is an interesting question. I like this kind of idea because it's not just asking you, what I could have done is ask you to list job design techniques. But in this case, I'm asking you to dig a little bit deeper in terms of not just what the techniques are, but what the techniques are and how would they relate to employee engagement. So you need to know 2 things. 1, what are the job design techniques? And 2, how to improve employee engagement. So that's interesting. If the majority of your staff are remote workers, okay, so they're working virtually, which of the 2 would you recommend and why? Okay. So we got a high level understanding of it. So let's take a look at the solution. Yeah, there we go. Let's go A first. So define employee engagement. So this is the definition from the textbook. Okay, so when I'm making solutions for the questions, I just write it exactly from the textbook, and I give it. This is exactly what I would give to my TAs. Okay, so when the TAs are evaluating this is what they're using. I tell them not to use word for word, but to go based on this case. So the amount of commitment and dedication that an employee has toward their job and the organization. Okay. B, describe job design. It's a little better. Okay, so B, the process of systematically organizing work into tasks that are required to perform a specific job. Okay, so that's job design. Now, C, this is where things really start to get interesting. Okay, so what I would probably do first, is to list out the different types of job design. Okay, so that's the first step. List them out because you're going to need to know using job design techniques. Okay. So from the job design techniques that you've listed out, work simplification, right? Yeah. The question specifically says you know that simplified jobs lead to horrible outcomes. So you really don't want to do that one in relation to increasing employee engagement. Industrial engineering is about increasing here. I gave the in brackets, I gave kind of like a brief definition as to what these are. Okay, so these are the job design techniques that are identified in our textbook. Okay, so from there, using job, which discuss two ways you can modify the job content to improve employee engagement. Okay, so the other catch, okay, employee engagement. If you want to increase employee engagement, want to increase, yeah, I just made that up right now. You need to increase job resources and or down is decrease job demands. Simplified speaking, simply speaking. Okay, so which of these would either increase job resources or decrease job demands? Okay, job rotation, yes, possibly. Okay, you can talk about it in terms of decreasing demands because it gives people a break, right, in between jobs. Give people more rewarding tasks, giving people more tasks, probably not the best option. More rewarding, possibly could be a form of a resource, perhaps, right? If you're getting something positive out of it. Team-based design, absolutely, because it's collaborative in nature. You're dealing with your friends, your colleagues, your friends. You can get support from them. That could definitely be a resource. Physical needs of workers, if you're finding something, yeah, I would absolutely agree with this in terms of the ergonomics component. If your chair is more ergonomic and you can get more engaged in your work when you're working from home, I guess that could be considered a resource. Good. So in this case, you get 2 marks for identifying each of those and a rationale. So first, list the options out and then link it to employee engagement. Okay, so if the majority of your staff are remote workers, which of these 2 would you recommend? Okay, so of all of those, I would probably say the team-based design, because when you're working in a virtual environment, you do not have that constant collaboration with a peer, and as a result, a necessary job resource, which could help you engage in your work on your peers. So really something to develop that relationship. So again, the layering, okay? So we have the job design techniques, then we have engagement, so you need to know job resources, demands, and then link it to that virtual nature. What's missing from that virtual nature is that interaction with colleagues. Okay? So for me, it's just making the increasingly more complex when you're thinking about this. You have to add an extra layer each time. All right, let's take a look at my second question here. This is again an old exam question. It's really quite similar, but a slightly different spin on it. So your head lifeguard at Canada's Wonderland, all of your lifeguards are adequately trained and capable of performing the job. So this is good. So training, right? If again, trying to think about what could this question be related to, because this question doesn't say like job design. Okay, so possibly training. Unfortunately, 3 patients were injured and almost drowned. Oh, wow. It's not a good pool to be at. Always wear life jacket, kids. While your manager wants you to hire new lifeguards, that speaks to like selection process, you believe you can correct the problem by motivating staff by implementing jobs. Okay, so this is like all these things it could be, and then you read the last thing and it's like, oh, nothing, just job design, but these provide context. Okay, so here, again, simple definition, what's job design? Hammer out the exact same definition you see in the text. Discuss 3 ways you can design the job to improve the safety of the water park. Okay, so in that case, okay, we're talking about job design and then kind of about occupational health and safety. Okay, so again, we're combining those 2 concepts, list of the job design techniques, and then embed the safety component. If the majority of your staff are relatively new to lifeguarding, which one of the 3 mentioned in part B would you recommend and why? Okay, so we have part B is job design and occupational health and safety, and then part C, adding an additional layer, okay, is you have people new to the job, okay, so they're less experienced in that particular role. All right, so let's see what we would do. So part A, straightforward. Okay, so the definition from the textbook, right? Perfect, you get 2 marks. Part B, again, you list them out as the first step, and then the second step is linking it to safety. Okay, so in this case, work simplification, simplifying the workplace to ensure that nothing is on the ground they can trip over. Yes, I think that's good. Increasing the efficiency of processes. Possibly if people are getting injured in the change rooms and you want to simplify going from like outside to in the pool. But we're talking about people drowning, so it's a little unlikely that industrial engineering will play a role here. Job rotation, switching tasks, yes, 100%. You will need to switch tasks in order to re-energize, refocus, increase your attention to your job. Yes. Give more rewarding tasks, yes, possibly. So the lifeguards are more excited about the work that they're doing. It's lifeguarding, so I don't know what type of rewarding tasks you can divide, other than perhaps supervisory roles or acting roles. Give them more tasks. Again, I don't know about giving more tasks. It seems like the issues, the context of the question doesn't really tell you what the lifeguards are doing wrong. It's just bad things are happening. Lifeguards are adequately trained and capable of performing their job, but this is still happening, so maybe it's I'm not sure what it is. Team-based job design, yes, possibly as well. Maybe they're understaffed, right? That could be a reason. In this case, based on what's written in the question, is it doesn't clearly define what the best answers would be, potentially even ergonomics. So in this case, list them out, identify 2 or 3. The question asks for 3. And then you need to provide a rationale as to why. Work simplification is the idea that it is the idea that you're trying to simplify a specific task, so you become more of an expert with that task over time. So, for example, if somebody is scanning an entire pool, it could be challenging for them to scan an entire pool. Maybe you need to have somebody specifically devoted to the shallow end, or specifically devoted to the deep end, or specifically devoted to a wave pool that might be existing in this area. Okay? So you get really good at lifeguarding, identifying the safety of people, in different environments in the waves. Okay, but you have to explain why this particular type of job design technique would be linked to safety. Right, that's the key feature here for this question. All right, and this one of the 3 that you mentioned, would you recommend it? Why? Okay, so these are new lifeguards. Okay, so even though they're trained and they're capable of performing the job, they're new. Okay, so what do we have here for you? An answer could answer monthly way, work simplified job, maybe too complex for new workers. Yes. Okay, so these are different rationales as to why it could be. So this is actually, so when I was writing this to the TAs, the grading folks, there wasn't one right answer. It was more about the rationale, which is important. Okay, so work simplification could be good if the job is too complex for new workers, so they can't handle all of it. The learning curve is too high, so as a result, simplify their tasks. Again, focus on the wave pool as opposed to other pools, right? That kind of way. Job rotation, cognitive changes might be needed in order to stimulate attention, focus on assessing people in the pool. Team-based design, needing support from others. Okay, you're working a team. Hey, I'm going to cover this zone, you cover that zone. Okay, that kind of idea. And then here's a couple of reasons why these answers would not be good, particularly for new workers. Okay? As I mentioned, you don't want to take on any more tasks. The efficiency isn't really the problem in this case. I thought potentially the idea of rewards, you get more excited, you might focus a little bit more. But with new employees, job enrichment, everything is new and everything is exciting. Everything's kind of rewarding when you're new. In the honeymoon phase of work. So job enrichment doesn't really make sense for new employees. Okay? So that is it. That's kind of the 2 questions we have. Now let's get just purely out of curiosity. Let's see how ChatGPT answers this question. Mr. or Mrs. All right, so employee engagement. Okay, so you know what's interesting? Okay, so employee engagement, they do a good job of defining it. However, this certainly isn't the definition from the textbook. So as a professor, one, I'd say, wow, this is pretty beefy. It sounds good and it really relates to the employee engagement content. But I know that if one, a computer wrote this and not a student, because it's worth 2 marks, and 2 marks is like a sentence, at least in my world. And it identifies aspects that we're not talked about in this textbook, right? So if we just do it side by side, I hope this is coming up. I hope this is coming up on the screen when I'm sharing it. Maybe I'll reshare just in case. No, I'm trying. Okay, so the actual definition is the amount of commitment and dedication. If that's what the goalpost that you're aiming for, and you get this, that's a red flag as a professor to say, that's not from you. Right? And similarly, in this case, here's the exact definition. And what did you put? Job design is process structuring. In this case, if somebody just put the first line, it'd probably be a lot closer. As soon as you get a little bit more sophisticated, if you will, that's going beyond what the textbook says, and more specifically, what you should be answering for this exam question. Okay, so this is, for me, this is where things get a little more interesting. So combining job design techniques with improving engagement. Okay, what do you say, Mr. or Mrs. ChatGPT? To the job design techniques to modify job content, improving by engaging a highly educated and highly driven staff. Could be job enrichment. Okay. Got that? Good. I like it. Reading the description. I like that. So I like, but what's interesting is that they don't actually, or they don't explicitly relate it to employee engagement. They don't say anywhere about the idea that you need to have more job resources or less job demands. They just talk about it. And what they've extracted from the question is identify 2 job design techniques. Yeah. So I say that ChatGPT did not do good on this question because it did not explicitly link to, there's no mention of job resources at all there, or at least explicitly. Promote skill development. It talks about all the good things it does, but it doesn't. Yeah, so I'd probably deduct quite a bit of marks on that. So ChatGPT, not good in this case. Okay. All right. Well, adding another layer. What was the last layer? Oh, remote work. Okay, so remote work often face isolation. Job enrichment, right? You have to more autonomy. Okay, in this case, I kind of like their argument here because they at least acknowledged, they at least related the idea of what remote workers, an issue of them. So for them, isolation, right? So in this case, they're trying to tackle this, the lack of direction component by providing them more autonomy and more challenging tasks. I still like the idea of team-based, to be honest, to be better. You're isolated and you don't have interaction with colleagues, supervisors. That's explicitly saying, well, you need more team interaction. It does not. So I like my answer better, but it's certainly a good attempt. All right, guys, that is ChatGPT answer. Well, let's just what the heck. Let's see how they did for number 2. So, given its tendency that we saw in the first question. Let's see how that goes for the second question. I describe job design. Ooh, even beefier than this, than the last time. So in this case, very similar. Write up for the first sentence. Okay, good. And the second and third sentence. You know what's interesting with this? For me, the question was describe job design. It doesn't actually say describe job design in the context of the lifeguards. But for me, I'd be more concise. I would probably stick to the first sentence. I do like the idea that they're trying to link it to the lifeguard context, but that's not what the question asks. So for me, again, it's a red flag that, like, why would a student would not, from what I see, they would not go out of their way to write in more content than is needed, unless they didn't know what they're talking about or a computer did it. Okay, discuss 3 ways: job design, connected safety at the water park. Okay, so here's probably the biggest red flag as a professor. These are ways of designing. These are ideas. Okay, so this question is trying to combine job design and the safety of, of the pool, of the patrons, of the workers. Here, the 3 options provided are solely associated with, like, safety. Nothing to do with job design. So for me, this is just a inappropriate question. These are all good ideas for improving safety, but they do not have to do with job design. So, yeah, so that would not be a good answer if you fail that component for sure. Okay, if C, okay, the new lifeguards component. So it's the idea new lifeguards are often lack experience. I really like how they start. They did this for the last question too. ChatGPT did it for the last exam question too. How they start with what's new or novel, or what's interesting about this component. New lifeguards often lack experience and confidence needed to respond effectively in emergency situations. I love that because it sets the stage to say, hey, this is what's new with this dimension of the question. And then they go on to say that the training and skill development is really important because that's what they need. So that's what they would say. But so again, this question wouldn't do too hot because they messed up part B already. But I do really like how they acknowledge that here's the dimension that we're trying to incorporate into this question. So while ChatGPT, in the past has done amazingly well in terms of multiple choice questions, it actually didn't do too hot in terms of any of these exam questions. So I'd say 0 for 2 for ChatGPT in this case. All right, guys, that's it. That is my video on HR questions related to job design. If you found this video helpful or want to learn more about HR style questions, hit subscribe, smash the like, make sure the notification tab is on, and check out my video next week.